Good morning and welcome to Economic Development Week. My name is Kim Woodworth, and I am the Executive Director for the Economic Development Council of Colorado. Just a few housekeeping items. You will have all entered in on mute just for recording quality purposes. But we really do encourage all of you to ask questions and be a part of this event. This is our opportunity to really connect. We are a statewide organization, both us and DCI, and so this is really our opportunity to be able to collaborate with all of you intermittently between our annual conferences. So please type those questions either into the chat section or use the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any questions after this webinar, please email them to Bobby. Her name has changed. It's bobby.blank@edcconline.org. And then the links to the recording and presentation and follow-up materials will be sent out to all of the attendees through email. So we'll be getting this out to you early, probably towards the later part of this week. And then finally, please follow us this week. This is a big celebration. So it's not just EDCC, DCI, and all of our state partners that are, blowing up the airwaves, but it's all of our economic development professionals all across the state that are really highlighting all the great work that you all are doing in your communities to create those vital economies. So follow us at EDC of Co and at Downtown COLO. And then we've got two hashtags. So Colorado celebration is hashtag CO Econ Dev Week 24. And IEDC is our International Economic Development Council, our partners there who started this, is hashtag Econ Dev Week. For those of you who are new to us, EDCC is a statewide industry association that supports economic development efforts across Colorado. We connect our communities and our members and our partners to high-quality educational opportunities and trusted resources, and advocate for sound policies and programs that support a vibrant economy and enhance quality of life for all of Colorado. DCI is committed to building downtowns that are prosperous, equitable, creative, and welcoming. Their work focuses on establishing community-wide partnerships to facilitate and encourage community engagement for increased economic vitality. DCI provides assistance to Colorado downtowns, commercial districts, main streets, rural communities, and town centers through advisory services, educational events, advocacy and information, downtown financing mechanisms, and their challenge program. EDCC is thrilled to announce that EDCC's annual Drive Lead Succeed conference registration is officially open. Thank you all for your patience with us. We will be at the Park Hyatt in Beaver Creek this year. So we're also launching our sponsorship drive. And we're hoping that you will find this as a wonderful opportunity to support the efforts in gathering the state's economic development community, which provides that education, resources, networking, and a lot of fun. Reach out to Bobby or myself if you have any questions, and Bobby is dropping those links into the chat section right now. Also, EDCC's Eddie Awards nominations are now open. We are planning a very special event this year. It's very different from years past. And we need the extra time for the planning. So we really want to make sure that we get those nominations in by the end of July. And I will just give you a little hint. It might have something to do, that party might have something to do with the world's best 80s ski party. Because after all, we're in Beaver Creek, right? So please submit your nominations for best community, business, volunteers, partnerships, legislators, rookies, and economic development achievements by the end of July. Also, basic economic development course is happening June 10th through the 14th. Don't miss out. The Metro Denver EDC is hosting us at the Denver Metro Chamber this year. Thank you to our partners. Registration is open, and scholarships and travel stipends are available. The BEDC course provides a substantial introduction to the theory and fundamentals of comprehensive economic development. The formal instruction emphasizes beneficial development that can result from constructive actions of local leaders and revolves around 5 major themes: innovative community development concepts, regional economics, basic factors in development, techniques of economic development, and trends in economic development. DCI is hosting 2 events here in June, a retail workshop where they'll be sharing practical ideas for expanding the reach of the brand through visual and messaging cues to convey your brand experience and tell stories with digital and visual displays. So this is just a step 2 to what you're getting this week through our webinars. And then the San Luis Valley Entrepreneurship Summit, which is aiming to connect entrepreneurs to one another and to resources to strengthen their regional networks and opportunities to collaborate. Those links are also being dropped into the chat section. We are celebrating narrative economics, the power of storytelling this week, figuring that this would be a great time for everyone to launch their messaging campaigns. Messaging does not need to just happen once a year. Economic Development Week could be happening all the time, but we find that it's really important, impactful for all of our communities to share the information all of the time. Find a cadence at least once a month or every other month to be sharing out the work that you are all doing. We all know that economic development is a marathon, not a sprint. And we have to be able to share all of those little details along the way so that everybody is on board and coalescing with you. Our second webinar is this Thursday, May 9th, where we will be taking data to harness and communicate those insights to create the compelling narratives and visualizations using data. So Bobby is dropping that link for the second webinar if you haven't signed up already. And now I'm sure you guys are ready for me to move on to today's webinar and to our wonderful speaker today. So in our today's complex landscape, the ability to craft an authentic narrative that resonates with policymakers, funders, and community leaders is crucial for driving economic development initiatives forward. Today, we will discover how to create a compelling story that honors the diversity and economic vitality of your town, region, and broader community and establishes a profound connection with your target audience. With that, I'd like to introduce to you today's speaker, Kristen Clifford Basil. Kristen is the Executive Director at Morgan County EDC. With a degree in design and merchandising from Colorado State University, go Rams, and a rich history of owning and managing several businesses, Kristen brings a profound understanding of business dynamics to her role. Her keen eye for identifying community needs and her entrepreneurial spirit led to create the Roots 76 initiative, a pioneering program tailored to enhance local workforce capabilities and directly meeting the requirements of local employers. Her efforts showcase her commitment to not just sustaining, but actively enriching the economic and social fabric of Morgan County. Let's give Kristen a warm Zoom welcome, the way we do it all the time. Kristen, we're turning it over to you.
Good morning. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to kind of tell our story today and how this initiative came about. A little background on just crafting the authentic narrative and what sparked this What's That Smell initiative. Morgan County's agriculture, and like many agricultural communities, we have smells and they aren't always pleasant. And we are close to the Front Range. And in the last 2 years, we've had some folks move out that have decided after buying a house, they didn't like the smells and have filed significant lawsuits against their neighbors. So whether it's a dairy or a manufacturer, it's caused a lot of divide in the community. And so we kind of took a step and said, we need to get that out there, that we have odors, they're normal, and we're proud of them because they define who we are, we identify with them, and we want to continue moving forward with what we were built on. So I will, I guess, share my screen now. Can you guys see that one? Okay. So I put this picture, a lot of you have probably seen it. It is Welcome to Fort Morgan mural that was created during HGTV. And depending on if you live here or not, you have mixed feelings about it because it may not represent you as a Morganite. And that is the majority. So this is not authentic to the locals, and being authentic to locals to have them buy in is probably one of the most important elements of telling your narrative, is so that when you are not speaking, your community is speaking, and you're all on the same page and you tell the same story. So this mural was a different one that was created, and it's right off the interstate, and it just happened to go up the same time as the HGTV stuff. And the funny part is, when the crew was driving past, they commented, "Oh, look at that mural, it's so cool, did we do that?" And we're like, "No, you didn't." But this is showing sugar beets next to the sugar beet factory right off the interstate, and this is a great representation of one way we're telling our story authentically, and it truly represents Morgan County, and also kind of starts the story of the smells, because it starts a conversation and opens the door to talk about the different odors that pop up and how they are a way of life and what they represent for Morgan County. So on our website, I put a page, and it's, I think it's Life in Morgan. At the bottom, I put a link, Life in Morgan County. And this is the first thing it starts with, is what's that smell? It's not for everyone, because if you're new to the area, or like the individuals that filed lawsuits, the smell is not for you, and it could impact what they said their quality of life. And then pushing forward to try to stop. So one lawsuit, a family moved out and bought a 5-acre property next to a dairy. Well, the dairy has been there for 40 years. They have regular operations, and they were going through a process. The family didn't like the process, and they filed lawsuits trying to stop that process because it was affecting their quality of life. And out here, these smells and agriculture represent our quality of life. So we stand strong in them, and we support them. And in economic development, it's part of our story and what we promote. So I added, in Morgan County, the scent of growth and tradition fills the air. It's a way of life, bringing with it the earthy essence of freshly turned soil and a distinct aroma of livestock operations. It's a smell of home and prosperity. Morgan County was founded primarily on agriculture and related industries, known for the cultivation of crops like sugar beets, corn, wheat, as well as livestock farming. Agriculture has historically been the backbone of the county's economy, and it continues to be a significant driver today. Our agricultural activities can generate distinctive odors, especially during planting, harvesting, and manure management. The smell of freshly tilled soil, for example, is common during planting season, while the odor of manure may be noticeable near livestock operations. And these smells tell our story, and a story we're very proud of. So we get a lot of laughs about this. Locals love this page if we put it out there. So it's just how we're telling our story, and the agriculture piece. It's who we are, and it's how we want to promote economic development. So we want to make sure that story stays at the front, and we are honest about it, and that we can tell it with truth. So, this led to how we've leveraged this for economic development is our history, and the needs of history to maintain it going forward are in the trade skills. And so our whole story kind of launched the Route 76 Workforce Development Initiative, and the need for skills training, but being innovative in how we bring trade skills back to our community. So Route 76 was developed, and that roots goes back to agriculture and people with roots in Morgan County, to make sure that we're keeping our story alive, and individuals that have roots here are more likely to tell our story in an authentic way. And then we recently I borrowed this image from somebody, but it really resonated when we were asked, why is economic development taking on workforce development? And so we were introduced to this, and we really felt it helped us tell the story of economic development and how economic development works, and the importance of, from the ground up, work, and having a strong leadership team, whether it's the board of directors, the local government, your internal team. You have to have strong leadership to start moving forward in any way. And then the community development pieces before you can do economic development. The workforce, when I first started, we would attend recruitment conferences, and we were always asked, what does your workforce look like? And we responded, we're agriculture-based, manufacturing, information like that. And that really wasn't what they were looking for. They were wanting the numbers. How many numbers of workers do you have available if we move our company there? And so that's how we got back to workforce, and how can we as an organization implement a workforce program but stay within the economic development piece and not step on anybody's toes. So we worked heavily with our investor organizations, and they kept coming back, we need workers, we need workers. So that's how we tell the story of how we got started in workforce development. Is we can't effectively do our job at the top where everybody wants us to be until we make sure that these pieces in the middle are really solid and we can promote them, and they are what we need to move forward, however that looks like for the future of Morgan County. So to support that workforce piece, we didn't want to be an organization that just applies for funding or has this great idea and gets a bunch of money, but doesn't actually do anything. So we, during a presentation by Elizabeth with the demographer's office, she always talks about birth, death, and migration. And she was presenting out here about a year and a half ago, and the light bulb went off with the migration piece from Morgan County and me in this program, and that we have a large number of high school students that migrate out of the county every year, 800 to 1,000 of 18 to 24-year-olds. I saw that number and I think that's prime entry-level workforce. That's a prime opportunity for us to have a measurable baseline and move forward with workforce development program. So we started Route 76 to target the 18 to 24-year-olds that move away, to identify why they're moving away, if there's a way we could get them to stay here, if it's a job. And we found that 70% that move away are moving away for a job, and most likely a type of job that we could place them in Morgan County. So then we received a grant to help start that initiative, working with the high school students. And then we came up with the idea of the trade skills and giving them some tools while they're in high school, so that when they do enter the workforce, they're not entering at entry level per se, they're entering at a higher step up, so a higher pay grade. So they're contributing at a higher level to the community, that community development piece. We have more money circulating with the community from those with roots that are already established. And so we came up with the Route 76 Mobile VR Lab. And that lab, I can stop sharing this, I guess. So that initiative, we take VR headsets into Fort Morgan and Brush high schools, and we work with juniors and seniors and provide them technical training for various trades. And the program we recently found out is certified with the U.S. Department of Labor as a certified apprenticeship program. So the kids will either earn pre-apprenticeship hours, or they could earn technical apprenticeship hours toward a future license while they're going through this program while they're in high school. So that's how that piece started. But in the second piece, we're launching more of a co-op aspect to this, where employers can participate and they can upskill and reskill their existing workforce to really bring home that workforce development piece, so that we have a strong workforce to work our way up that pyramid to participating in that recruitment effort for a new major employer, or even just expanding our existing workforce. So there are a lot of different elements to this, and how we used our authentic narrative to get to this place. And I could talk about this probably all day, because we're really excited about the program and the success we've had with it. But I will pause and see if I need to repeat anything, or any questions about how we got here, or ideas or anything.
I'll open it up to the audience. I also have a few questions myself. So if somebody has a question, go ahead and let's see. Leslie, love the use of VR for workforce development. I use it with a client and it really does help with learning.
So the other piece about that VR aspect is the platform we use for the training is it's available in English and Spanish. So that piece really looks at removing barriers, meeting kids where they are. The kids we're working with are not college bound. They have no interest in college. So we're really trying to target those that fall through the cracks and provide them opportunities, whether it's a language issue or just access to different things. So that's been a really great thing with the VR as well. We currently have 28 students enrolled, and I think approximately 11 are ELL students.
So my question for you, Kristen, is first and foremost, how did you determine, what your community, what was the process that you went through to determine what messaging really resonates with Morganites?
As far as what's that smell, or just in general?
Just in general, how did you come up with that? Like, did you do a survey? Did you do kind of a walk and talk kind of campaign where you were going out and asking folks? How did you determine that was how everyone in Morgan County felt about their community?
So Morgan County's small. The county itself has 30,000 people. So I spent just a lot of time listening, and not in organized situations, but eavesdropping on conversations, um, Facebook, reading comments about different things. The HGTV piece really brought out what people thought, um, not only in Morgan County, but how we were represented. And I took a lot away from that. And so that really, the authenticity that's how that started, is what is our story? How do we tell it? So just looking at what we had out there, whether it was EDCC or tourism or any organization, and just reading the comments and listening to what people were saying, and really hearing that they didn't feel they were being represented appropriately. And then my board of directors as well, around a group of people that represent various industries and the challenges that they have, and just looking at how can we twist what might be looked at as a problem as to something positive, and how we can use that for the future, or even right now, to tell our story for economic development and the people that live here.
Mm-hmm. So then tell me more a little bit about, how did you get this campaign started? How did you fund it? What would the attendees today want to know about where you got started and how they could do the same for their community?
So the Route 76 started with our strategic plan. We were doing it annually, and it was very ambitious the first year. And through that, we kept hearing workforce, workforce, workforce. We can't do this until we have a workforce. We can't do this until we have workforce. So we created a subcommittee off of the strategic plan and of my board of directors. We were really focused on workforce development and what we could do, what are the needs. And that's how direct workforce was identified. Most of the vacancies here, while high paying jobs, they don't require education beyond high school. So identifying that piece as the first one. And then the Rural Innovation Opportunities Grant was open. So we applied for that, and we were awarded to hire a workforce development program manager and start working with the high school students in the schools and the major employers, identifying the jobs that are available and talking to the students about what their plans are, career readiness. And then from that, we expanded and have a monthly meeting for our stakeholders. So the same time, same day, every month, we have a meeting. It's the Route 76 meeting. Our employers come, the school districts come. We present on updates, program updates, challenges we're having, and let them know, like, we need your help. We need you to step in, and we need like right now, school's getting out. So we need to identify jobs for these high schoolers to go in for the summer for part-time. So we're our call to action to our employers. If you want to benefit from this program, we need you to step up and tell us what jobs you have, so we can help connect the dots and help get the kids to you, so that we do have that stream and this is a successful program. And then once we got that established, we had the random idea of trade skills training through VR, and if that's an opportunity. And that was just a personal, I was driving to work and was thinking of my boys and their futures and how they think they're going to be YouTube stars, and how do I get them away from that? They're not the only ones that think that, and that's the way high schoolers think, is they're all going to be famous YouTubers. So how can we connect and get them interested? And that was how the VR came in. And we had this grand idea. The RISE grant opened up. We found the platform. We're like, great, now we just need a grant. The RISE grant opened up a couple weeks later. We had everything together and planned, so we were able to apply and were awarded that. And that's how we purchased the VR headsets, the transportation piece, the licenses for the students. So everything's free for the students. And that grant allowed us to do that. We're developing a co-op for employers because the cost savings for the program is significant. It's $1,000 to go through an electrical training program. So the cost savings on the training and then the safety issues. So it removes that safety barrier in training an employee for electrical. So out at Cargill or Western Sugar, if they're training in electrical and there's a shock, no matter how small, like a sweater shock, they have to take them to the ER, which is thousands of dollars. So we're not saying they're not going to get shocked later, but they're going to be more aware if they do something, they could potentially get shocked, and they go into that role with more confidence as well for doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my days of being a YouTuber went out the door several years ago, so I can only imagine. There's a question in the chat section. What resources and support is needed to continue? If there is anything the Workforce Development Council or Rural Workforce Consortium can do to support you further?
Yes, our initial RISE grant, we wrote in for a mobile a bus, because we wanted to create a gaming environment to get the kids engaged. And then we later found out that while awarded the grant, that funding cannot be used to purchase a vehicle. So that's kind of our next mission, is doing a capital campaign locally. And while grants are great, we don't want the program to rely on grants going forward, because at any point that funding could go away. So we're really looking at how we can create a sustainable and resilient program. So that's how that co-op is coming into play, and having a special program for our members to pay into, and having a dollar amount we have to raise every year, and putting it on them, because it is there's a huge benefit for our major employers. So looking at that co-op piece and supplementing with other grant dollars, but the schools also, we work heavily with them on the CTE courses, and at some point, probably not next year, but maybe in 25, 26, they'll be able to pay for the license for the students. So that'll be on at the high school. We'll still facilitate with the VR. But then the really big hope is that we can create a model that other smaller communities can implement, because at the end of the day, capacity is always an issue in hiring somebody. But the program itself is really cost effective. And, we have a community college here, but there are other smaller communities that don't, but their workforce needs aren't any different. So developing a program that can be picked up and placed in any rural or urban area that has a lack of resources or access to anything like this is our big goal. We're in our first year of this program, so we're still identifying what resources we need and what that looks like and how we're going to get there. So stay tuned.
So I have always stated that economic development is workforce development is economic development, and our great friend Clark Becker, who is on this call, who is a great mentor of mine, would also say that quality of life begins with a quality job. And I look at economic development as the person behind, the work that we do, because at the end of the day, it's the job. In order to help a business expand, they need to hire. And it's those people who not only are running those businesses, but those people that they're hiring. And so when we think about how we work through economic development and our goals, that we are thinking about the person first. What does the person need in order to live and work and play in your community? So I love the fact that you're doing this. I know that there were some questions. I know that you've addressed some of those. You do have a workforce center that's already located here, but how can you, this is one of those examples where you're taking the economic development side to workforce development and being able to be that partner in the community to support it.
Yeah, we really looked at what resources are available, like the community college and the workforce center, but where's the gap? Because there's always a gap. And so when we approach different things, we're always looking at where's that gap that MCEDC can step in, whether it's our revolving loan fund and this workforce development program, where it's really specific in its work. So it's targeted, it's not broad, it's not, workforce development for the whole county. It is, but it's on a smaller piece. It's just one piece to that bigger puzzle. And the kids are the future. And that's back to our narrative, is we're agriculture. We're not high tech. We're not going to have a large engineering firm move out here. We're not going to have Amazon move out here. So who are we and how do we fill that and sustain like what makes people happy here, the quality of life? And that really is agriculture, and agriculture is ever evolving. So, electrical is not necessarily electrician or a lineman. If you have a sprinkler on your property, having electrical knowledge is going to help you. If you want to go work at Cargill and work your way up through Cargill, they have electrical on site, they have training, and you can have a full career pathway there. So it's also telling kind of the story of the different career opportunities that fit within Morgan County to grow our future. But the one thing I've really learned is telling our narrative, but the narrative the future hears is probably even more important, because we're seeing a lot of 20 years ago, you were told to get a 4-year degree, trades don't go into the trades, and now look what's happening. So that narrative that was told 20 years ago as far as a job and career and what you should do is impacting us today. So ensuring that the narrative we're just putting out there, especially to the youth who are the future and going to be our future workforce, is pivotal, and that has to be taken into consideration. I just heard somebody, CDL drivers were lacking in that area, and I just heard an older person who said you shouldn't have to go through that. It's too hard. It's ridiculous. You have to go through all of that training to be a CDL driver. Well, now that student is hearing what we were told 20 years ago in the trades, and we're actually in the middle of a huge problem with the CDL drivers. But that student also doesn't know any different. He doesn't know that he shouldn't have to do it. He's never been a CDL driver, so for him it's normal. It's just different. So that narrative for that one person, it was unfortunate, but I think that was a light bulb for me too, is we really have to change that narrative that we're telling the future workforce and who we want working. And for us, it's the kids that live here and have roots, because your family's here. You're going to have that connection. You're going to appreciate it, and you're going to raise your kids here and keep that tradition going.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more, because I remember graduating high school and being scared to death. I had no idea what I was doing, where I was going, but my mom said, you need to get a 4-year degree. I don't care what it is, just get your 4-year degree. And then what after? And there wasn't even a placement program. My placement program was right into retail for 10 years. So not that we don't need retail managers and, store managers, but that wasn't the path I was going for. So, creating, a pathway, a story of the pathway, a clearer story of the pathway is very beneficial to students. I want to go back to our chat section. We have a couple questions. Leslie asks, is there a shadow or on-the-job skills and relationship building between workforce and the high school students?
So we're working on that. One of the challenges are unions for a lot of our major employers out here, and they don't allow job site tours if you're under the age of 18, and they don't allow for part-time working. So we're navigating how we can get through that. We did have one step up and ask if they could sponsor students. So meet them as a freshman or sophomore and work with them as they go through high school, and finding opportunities to connect with them and build them up to be a future employee for them. So that piece is being navigated. We do partner with Kids at Their Best for kind of some job skills and interview processes. And we're trying to figure out a way to do the job skills or the shadowing.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And Flo, I love this question, and I call it R&D, rip off and duplicate. She loves the pyramid graphic. So where did you find it, and can they borrow it? It explains that traditional economic development, and then what economic development districts can focus on. So those are those columns in the middle. So I think that graphic was really good to see how we all fit into this puzzle.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm sharing the slides with you, right, to send out?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you'll have them. And I some person came in my office and gave me a deck of papers and a presentation they do with that pyramid, and then I just recreated it in Canva so it looks prettier. But I love duplicating. I mean, don't recreate. I mean, the more we duplicate, the more consistent we are across the board. So you'll get it with the deck.
I love that. I'm so glad that you said that, because that is something that EDCC and DCI have been working so hard at, is making sure that we have a consistent message across our communities about what economic development is. And you guys will all start to see co-align, which will be an initiative that we've been working on for the last year that's going to really help us align all of our efforts so that we can reduce redundancy, increase capacity. And this is one of those. I don't ever fear trying to use somebody else's work.
Well, I think that the piece for us is, you know, we're a small community, 30,000 people. And so when we you think of economic development, everybody's comparing themselves to somebody else. Oh, this person's doing this person's doing this. And I think that's really where our light bulb with our narrative and that what's that smell really hit home of we don't need to compete with somebody in Denver. We need to we are who we are and we need to tell our story. And that pyramid really helps when I talk to our board about our activity of explaining this is where we fall. Eventually we'll get here, maybe not, but this is where we fall right now. And this is what we have to focus on to get there. So every organization's in a different spot. As long as we have that consistent message of the goals and what the different pieces are that are needed to get to the end goal, I think it's just having that narrative that's consistent and knowing where you fall within it. And that me going to recruit a company and answering, we're agriculture and manufacturing, and they're like, no, how many people? I was like, oh no, we don't have that. That was my aha of, all right, I got to step back and how do we get to that piece so that we are out there recruiting businesses that fit with who we are and what we have going for the future.
Perfectly well said. And actually, that leads us into the next question from Jane. What happens if the brand as perceived by your community does not resonate with your investors? How do you create that balance to get the buy-in from your community while being able to appeal to companies looking to expand in your region?
Fortunately, I haven't. Well, I mean, I guess we could take that mural. It created an opportunity. So that the mural that I mentioned, the Welcome to Fort Morgan, the mural itself didn't resonate with locals, and the location. It implies that you're seeing it as you enter Fort Morgan. It's actually at the very end of Main Street when you're actually leaving the bustling downtown area. So it created an opportunity for us to look at what is important when you're telling the story. And that mural itself created an opportunity to bring people to Morgan County and give us a platform to promote Morgan County elsewhere. If your narrative that comes up with doesn't fit, then it gives you an opportunity to re-engage and encourage people to come to the table and voice their opinions. And it gives you an opportunity to expand on what methods did you use before that didn't work, and how can you pivot and look at engagement differently? Is it in person? Is it digital? For us out here, everything's in person. If we do anything digital, there's no engagement. So I think it's just knowing who you're working with and identifying your key stakeholders, not your city managers and not necessarily your county commissioners, but your key community people that are out there, boots on the ground on a daily basis, talking to people and asking them, what are you hearing? Or, get your feelers out for this. I've got a handful of people in the community that I come to and I'll throw an idea. And if they don't like it, I know that they speak for a large group and we kill it right away. But if they think about it, then we explore it more. And could this be an opportunity? I mean, what's that smell? Who would come up with that as their tagline as a recruitment method? But it's interesting and catchy. And so you think about it, well, what is it? And you read more about it. And you're like, oh, it's agriculture. Oh, that makes sense. I actually grew up near that. That makes, so I think just spending time on it too. Don't rush it. This is 4 years in the making for me as the director for MCEDC, to where I even had that light bulb of how we can tell our story.
Yeah. As Heidi says, and I can imagine, I can agree to it as well as that smell is the smell of money. So maybe we can also, make a connection back to the money piece. Alicia brings up a really good point too. Housing obviously has been a major issue for all of our communities across the state of Colorado, and being able to either one, have an attraction campaign, for locals to come back, or for locals to stay. What has housing looked like? Has this been an issue for you and your community?
Housing has been a huge issue. In that it was one I toyed with for a long time of, do we take on housing? And at the end of the day, for us and our organization to take on housing and the challenges just doesn't work out. But we're a partner and we're always looking at ways to expand on it. We've been fortunate in the last 4 to 5 years to have some housing come up. it's extremely expensive. Like the rental units are, they say they're market rent, and I have a hard time believing that because they're about as much as a mortgage. But we're seeing in the next 3 to 5 years about 500 new homes coming in. So um, it's for us, and where we fit in is support, because there's so much government incentives and municipal incentives that come in that we just decided we can't do a lot for it. There is a project. I'm always talking to developers and asking where their next spot is, what they need to consider Morgan County, and then I kind of bring that back. So we have some townhomes being built. There's 118 of them, I think. And that was a builder that I recruited out here. And it's in Fort Morgan. And then we have some housing developments popping up. But I have a background in appraising. So I've for years have seen this gap in the starter home and the end home, and there was no transition up. So
Yeah.
because there was no building of houses, the starter home was added on to, remodeled, modified, adjusted, and that became the forever home for people that have lived in Morgan County for a long time. And then there's the brand new home that's over here that people that were from here left and maybe came back can pay more for because they had more equity in a house in the Front Range or somewhere else. And so they're building these really big houses. So there's that gap in the market that's just now starting to get filled. So we're hoping to see some transition from that smaller starter home to that middle home, like the townhome. And then there's some row homes going in. And then there are some very expensive homes going in as well. But we're hoping to see that transition and building block back for the housing piece. Cargill did just invest significant funding in some housing. So they're building 150 apartments with additional townhomes and then some homes to sell to their employees. So getting the employers involved. And that's taken several years. I would say upwards of 10 years to convince them to finally take that on for their own organization and growth and sustainability and retention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and I know that Cargill's, main impetus of doing that was because they were spending so much money busing their employees in from other parts of the state to get enough employees to work there.
There's that, but the other thing to consider when that was a big push for a long time. If we build it, they will stay here. Well, you forget that at least 50% of those employees have families in Greeley's where they're being bused from with
Mhm.
kids. They don't want to pick up and leave to come out here. So that bus will still exist, but it does give opportunity for a family that's living here to move into a different spot, or somebody graduating high school to have an apartment that they can afford to move into and then upgrade and move through. So
Yes, because as much as we want our kids to stay in our communities, I'm sure their parents are not wanting them to be in their basements forever. So.
that does bring up a conversation about the accessory dwelling units and zoning allowances for that, for parents to potentially put up a tiny home in their backyard for their student to transition through. We've not had that conversation yet, but we're hearing of the idea.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And something to be remiss of, but when we are ripping off and duplicating, it's important to also credit the creator, just to make sure that you don't first and foremost get yourself in trouble, but second and foremost that we are sharing in our community together, and all that talent that is creating those graphics and resources. So I know, Clark, you have come off mute a couple different times. Do you have a question or anything to add to Kristen's comments?
Yeah, Kim, thanks so much. And Kristen, I just want to applaud you and what you're doing there. It warms my heart, my background, working all over rural Colorado for so many years, a real passion there. And I know Carrie Linker is smiling down at you right now. But as I listen to you talk, and I listen, aware of the so many other people, so many Metro folks that are here, I'm reminded of a statement that I won't mention the name of the community, but the mayor of a small mountain community where I was doing a community assessment years ago said to me, he says, our biggest problem is we suffer from terminal uniqueness. And I said, I'm going to use that. And
I like
and
that.
I talk about rip off and duplicate. I mean, that's what economic development, Kim, you said it so well, is all about. Is everyone on this call can take components and things that you're doing and the challenges that you're facing. It might not be agriculture, but there's so many correlations to the great work that economic development does all over the state of Colorado. I'm wish that the local workforce center was able to be, and maybe they are, more engaged with you because of the things you're doing, workforce development. I think economic development should be the lead. Kim, you said at the beginning, economic development is workforce development and vice versa. So just to applaud that and keep that work going up. And I hope that a lot of other communities, urban and rural, will build on what the successes that you're having up there.
Thank you. And we do partner. Harvey Greenwood is our industry sector partnerships, and he attends all of our Route 76 meetings. And we actually have a guest speaker, I can't remember her name, coming out in June for the Route 76. But if anybody finds themselves in Morgan County the second Thursday at 7 a.m., that's when we meet to do the Route 76. And we do the program highlights and just the needs and the future of it.
Something that comes to mind, and you have mentioned it, but I wanted to just highlight it one more time, is that I think that from, another mentor of mine, Laura Brandt from Metro Denver EDC, would always say that, economic developers and workforce development professionals are the ringleaders, right? We are the ones that are coalescing our community, everyone in our community. And we know that the list of stakeholders in our community is very deep. And being able to bring everybody to the table and building on these programs and projects is very important. And so to me, what you are doing right now sounds more like a coalition building, and that you're 1 year into it. And as you keep going through the steps, that more people within your stakeholder group will become part of this coalition and maybe take some of this, some of the onerous of the work off of your plate so that you can focus on something else. But that you were able to be the impetus, that you were able to be the catalyst, if you will, the catalyst project to get something going and get everybody coalescing around it. All right. Any other questions? Starting to come to the top of the hour here.
Yeah, I do have one.
Yes. Thanks.
So I'm just wondering, sometimes, especially in, let's say, rural communities, when you start having new developments come in, you tend to face there's a group that is very comfortable with the way things are. And when new developments come in, you hear things like "not in my backyard." Has any communities experienced that, and how have you navigated that, or how are you going about it to try to change the perceptions and actually convince your community that development is essential for growth?
Do we have another hour? Because I'm pretty sure Morgan County invented the NIMBYs. Proximity-wise in the state, with just transition, everything going on, Morgan County is at the core of the Colorado Pathways and renewable energy. And we have renewable energy. We have over, I think, like 40,000 acres that are permitted for solar and 63 acres permitted for BESS. Anytime development happens, there's always somebody that doesn't like it. It's not what they had in mind. Solar panels, not ideally what I want in my backyard either, like full disclosure. But I have to be neutral as economic development. The reality of a project like that and what I'm dealing with is most of those projects will never see the light of day. It's a hot moment. They're getting permitted so that they can move forward and show that they have a permitted project, but they don't have the power purchase agreement. So it's different for every project, but I can tell you we have a group, they call themselves the Red Shirts. They show up at the public hearings wearing all of their red shirts, and they record it, and then they live stream it later for the people that couldn't attend. Education is key on the impacts. If you can get economic impact software to show, like, do you have a project in mind that you're challenged with, or is this just a hypothetical? Because like for us, we would never support a project coming in with 100 new people. We're probably peaked at 50 right now. So for us, a renewable project, the way I twist that story is, would you rather see solar panels or a housing development? And most of them are like, oh, I'd rather see solar panels because I don't want to see a bunch of houses in my backyard. I don't want all those neighbors. That's why we live out here. So using your narrative to help tell your story too. And so economic development does not recruit businesses, one, because we can't right now, but when we get back into that mode, it will be, we're talking to our stakeholders, what ancillary businesses do you need in the county to support you? What are you buying out of the county that if we could recruit a business, would really support you in what you're doing? The NIMBYs are always going to exist. And sometimes I'm the NIMBY. We did a best tour, just to see what a battery would look like. And somebody said, the NIMBYs, I don't know why they wouldn't want to look at this. And so I said, well, what's the footprint? And they said maybe an acre, and it was less than a quarter acre. And I said, if this is what I was going to see in the middle of a field, I would be okay with it. But put 63 times 4 of these in two to three different areas, and tell me you wouldn't be upset about that. So there's that education and perspective that has to get out there when anytime a project comes. And there's always false information getting out there. So you just have to make sure that you have the accurate information and you're sharing it and you're getting it out there to all the stakeholders, and you're partnering with the developer as well, to make sure that they're sharing accurate information and they're giving you accurate information. Just being transparent is going to be your saving grace at the end of any project.
Very good question, Jane, and I think we deal with it all the time. I just popped into the chat section, the difference between, and I think there's a narrative, as we keep talking about, that there's a difference between growth and development. And development is really more of that intentional piece that creates the structure, and it creates the ability for a community to be vital. And there are communities all over the state that are doing extremely well at creating vital economies, but staying within their narrative or their uniqueness. Chaffee County is probably one of them. Grand Junction. I'm seeing them all over, kind of popping up and saying, "This is who we are." We're focused on economic development because we want to make sure that we're creating a life that people want to live, work, and play in our community without leaving. And that is what keeps that kind of coalescing of your community together. Hence the reason why we wanted to talk about this narrative, and keeping the narrative real and keeping a consistency of the narrative in your community so that they don't lose sight of what it is that you're trying to do. So hopefully that helps you with the NIMBYism.
Well, and the other piece is agriculture in a lot of areas is considered to be a problem for the planet and different areas. But if you educate yourself on the different developments, you can turn that problem and it's actually part of the solution. So we have some renewable energy projects going in on our farming operations out here that are turning that waste that is this giant problem that has been, they want to shut them down because of this problem. It's actually being turned into part of the solution. And those are the projects we really get behind, is that ecosystem and how we can turn that dairy manure into renewable natural gas or hydrogen or whatever it might be. So finding that story within your project to share out, and it's not, I don't want to say twisting it, because you're flipping the narrative to the other side of it. It's always been there. You just haven't focused on it because there are the NIMBYs that they're very loud, they're very visual, they're out there, but there's also the opposite side of that story that is true. And finding that story and telling that, I think, is really important in that development piece. And for the naysayers, because if you can tell the truth behind it, sometimes they back off. And if they start backing off, they'll all flock to back off eventually.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right. Any other questions? All right, I want everybody to give Kristen a big round of applause. Great work that you're doing up there in Fort Morgan, or in Morgan County, sorry, I should say that. Very excited. And so if you have any other questions for her, definitely we'll share out her information, and visit her website. I just really encourage you to see what work they're doing there, as well as through their social media efforts. So with that, I just want to kind of close out today's items. I'm just going to share my screen one more time. So send any questions to bobby.blank@edcconline.org. And then links to the recording and the presentation and follow-up materials will come to you later this week. And then Bobby did share a link in the chat section to take a survey for us. That helps us keep bringing quality content that you guys need and want to you. And so please fill that out. It's a very quick survey. There's 4 questions to it. And then also don't forget those upcoming events that we talked about: Basic Economic Development course, June 10th through the 14th, and Drive Lead Succeed Conference, 13th through the 16th. DCI's Retail Strategies, June 14th here in Grand Junction. Entrepreneurship Summit in San Luis Valley. I think it's Alamosa, correct, Bill? On June 26th. And then please help us celebrate all week long. Share your stories in your communities. Don't forget to put the hashtags in there, Colorado Econ Dev Week 24 and Econ Dev Week. That way we can follow you, repost you, recomment, and all of that. But we want to keep us at the top of all of the airways to talk about the value and importance of economic development. So with that, congratulations for all the successes that you have done and for all the successes that we're going to see from you in the future. And we'll see you on Thursday if you haven't registered yet. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.